Hey everyone. Last time, Ellen made it to the Endless Corridor, so today we're going to be entering the maze and seeing what it's like when we finally go into a realm where we're not welcome. After changing to a cloak that's more likely to be practical, no water element attacks in the Endless Corridor. Of course, we need to talk to everybody first and get the lay of the land. Well, it sounded kinda like a threat. Yeah, but we know there's a secret path through the maze. And there it is. Once again, the rebel just tells someone who's presumably his enemy how to get through the maze. But of course, everybody's helpful. Yeah, it's just the same thing. So it was ice for Keats and wind for Ellen that we used to take down Habitrot. Yep, it's all the fault of modern thought and that atheism. Making people believe their spirits aren't going to go anywhere interesting when they die. Oh, gotta set up a folk palette. Something that's going to be useful even though I don't know exactly what's coming up. You know, non-elemental, destroy, thunder. Usually a pretty good mix of attack types. And Kilmolus, just because I like Kilmolus. Looks like we start with Thrumpin, though, instead of Berlachen. And sadly, I completely forget to use Thrumpin while I'm here. I'll whip it out during the grinding video, of course. Mostly just because I realize as I'm grinding it up that I've never actually done anything with it. There might be enough in here to unlock its first karma already. Or I might be one short. And I forgot to watch which way Habitrot ran. This was a dead end when I came through as Keats. And this time it's not. Leads to the next room. Because the paths are different for each character. Now that's not going to get confusing if you try to return to this chapter from later. We don't need to capture any more Thrumpin at the moment, and I don't have a good source of purple dust for now. So I'll build up Azrai's Karma. I need to kill 5 Thrumpen with it. And that wind attack is coming from another new folk, Garbera. Garbera. I don't know how it's pronounced. Pretty simple to take down, and it's got a pretty good attack, I think, but I'm not going to have a chance to use it just yet, because I doubt that Garbera is weak to wind attacks. I'm also not going to be defeating any folks with it in this room. It's kind of an annoying attack. They're all pretty annoying, but I think all of its attacks go in straight lines, so not too difficult to dodge most of the time. And I love the sounds that they make. I absolutely love them. Some of my favorite effects of the game. I have no idea what just happened there. Ellen just kind of teleported to the far side of it, or, more likely, it teleported to the far side of her and the camera jumped accordingly. So let's go to one of the dead ends and see what we can find in there. Most importantly, I'm looking for a Spriggan. But dead ends for Ellen work a little differently than they did for Keats. Instead of being full of enemies, they're full of crystals. And this one's just got our first green liquid. And we needed one of those for Ketchi. And I guess I might as well build it up more while I've got it. Just reducing MC consumption. Nothing that actually makes it useful at all. And this crystal's got the enemies hiding in it. At least Answerer is pretty familiar. And I'm sure that it's weak to electricity, mostly because there's a karma for Hobbledy defeating 5 Answerer. But I think I'm going to want to capture some before I go about defeating them. Ellen at least has plenty of options for slash element attacks already. This is just the first one that has a combo. And I need to absorb 3 more of them, so I'll get started right now. Hobbledy's usually pretty good against them, but if you time it incorrectly, those interminable invulnerability frames will just get in your way. I'm quite surprised at how effective Hawk turned out to be. I keep overlooking a lot of the folks from Warcadia, but I think they're some of the best ones in the game. And here's Garbera's attack. It has a very nice spread. I don't really know how strong it is. I haven't looked at the meters to compare it to, say, Boobry. But it works for what it does. And while I'm back in the second room, I might as well go ahead and continue building up some folks. Not a whole lot to say about Thrumpen, I don't think. It hops around, it's got a shield. No particular weaknesses that I noticed, no particular resistances. Although I doubt that Thrumpen would be vulnerable to any of my status effects. Kilmulus wasn't. And I'll try another dead end. Looks exactly the same as the last dead end. And again, the green crystal opens the door. That's probably going to continue to be the case. The blue one last time had a green liquid. And we get another, just in case we ever need it. And I completely misjudge Hobbledy's range. So just another couple of answer, nothing particularly new or interesting. We'll just run this a bit faster. Obviously not all the dead ends have this same collection of enemies in them. And we'll see some more interesting stuff in just a bit. But we're almost done here. I love this part. He just cuts them both down. And that's where Answer's real thunder weakness is. You can shock them. And we need to absorb 5 more for the final combo attack. I don't feel like running in and out of this particular dead end to do that right now. So back to the first room, because once again we missed a rather vital dead end. And more Thrumpin that we can kill with Ozrai. Kind of thought that would be the last one, but I guess we need one more. And a good thing Ozrai is pretty cheap and pretty effective. And now it's even cheaper. It occurs to me I should be killing these guys with some of the folks that need a certain number of kills to level up. But here's the dead end, where it was progress for Keats. Now it's just 2 crystals, the green one and the blue one. So maybe no enemies? Of course, that would be too much to hope for. This is where Berlachin is hiding for Ellen. And for the first time, it's pretty close to the way it was for Keats. I want to take down this Ludiag from a distance. They can be kind of dangerous. And also, I think there's a karma for Bullseye for defeating a certain number of Ludiag. Pretty much every folk from Warcadia has one of its karmas unlocked here. Let's see what we got. You know, obviously absorb more Ludiag and defeat Berlachin with Ludiag. And absorb more Berlachin. So I mean, as if Bullseye weren't effective enough, it adjusts its aim between the 2 shots to hit the enemy as it moves. I really don't know why I don't use the Warcadia folks more. Once again, the green crystal is our ticket out of the room. And there is just no crystal that has an item in it. But we've gotten the unique item twice, so after this it'll all be warm tree nuts. So here's Berlachin, at least with a 2-hit combo. And it'll start building up Garbera on a folk that nothing needs to kill. You can see it does a fair amount of damage, and enemies can just run right into the tornadoes. I'm quite impressed. The only real downside with Garbera is it doesn't have the range that, you know, Boobry has, but it's not like I really need to be that far away from the enemies. I can get right up to them and just whirlwind them all to death. And that sound it makes, I don't know what it is, it's just so funny. Unfortunately, I need to defeat Ulctor with it, which we're not going to find in this chapter. Even so, I still want to keep it around and plan to use it for a lot of my wind elemental needs. And once again, almost halfway through the video before we actually move into the 3rd room in this realm. And this one's just full of Berlachin, so absolutely no need to build them up by going into dead ends. Of course, I do have to watch with so many of them around, but Garbera just surrounds them all with wind. And to be honest, you don't really need Berlachen's full combo to be effective. I mean, granted, I can't continuously attack with it the way I can with a lot of my other melee folks, but it's so much stronger. I think just 3 hits from Berlachen will take, let's say, a Berlachen or a Thrumpin to red. I'm going to keep using Garbera when they're all grouped up, though, because I can hit a lot of them at once. I think the only real downside to using Berlachen, particularly with its full 4-hit combo once I get that, I don't like the movement pattern that it has. Sticking with 3 hits might be the way to go. And there are so many of them in this room, I might even... Okay, no. Didn't get its karma. But I'll get it soon, there will be plenty more of them later. And here's an interesting folk. It's not doing anything. It's immune to all kinds of damage. And, of course, surrounded by exploding crystals. Now, could this picture book page be the one that tells me how to deal with this folk? No, it just shows Henke shooting water bubbles at some kind of flying book spider dragonfly thing. Fortunately, I know how to deal with this folk already, and all I really need to do is clear out some of these crystals and see if I can get a little extra health before I deal with it. They all explode. But that's a bit more like it. So to deal with this completely immobile clockwork folk, we need to power it up. And get some non-elemental attacks ready. Because that's the closest thing this has to a weakness as far as I know. Pretty sure wind is effective, but I don't know if it's as effective as good old non-elemental damage. It goes down quickly. And it's yet another Thunder Element folk. Which is kind of weird, since you have to use the Thunder Element to wake it up. But I really don't know why you would want to use this one. Its pattern makes no sense to me. And I can only unlock its first karma anyway, because the folk Balewind also doesn't appear in this chapter. And there's only one Humpty in the chapter, I think. At least within this part of the realm. So we get another room with more answerers. I decided to give Humpty a chance, just to see what it could do. Mostly run right into their shields. I think going up against Answerer, you want to stick with stuff like Hawk. Yeah, I guess it doesn't always work, but most of the time it works really, really well. And there's our Worm Tree Nut. The supply of green liquid hasn't completely dried up, but we're not going to find any more in the dead ends, I don't think. So take this room at high speed. Got a green quartz. That's actually really amazing. Snag a couple of Berlachen, build up its final combo hit. And I don't remember offhand which folk it was that needs to defeat a bunch of Berlachen, but Berlachen needs to defeat a bunch of, well, anything. And Ludiag needs to defeat a number of Berlachen. I remember that. Problem is, where for Keats, Ludiag was a combo attack that was actually kind of usable, For Ellen, it's not really very good. And there's its final combo hit. It actually jumps forward and lunges at the enemy, which, if you're at particularly close range, will generally just go right over the enemy's head. Ludiag, on the other hand, is a spinning attack. The longer you charge it, the wider the area is by a little bit, and it probably does more damage. It's kind of hard to tell. It's not a very strong attack, as you can see. And I just really don't see what point it has in Ellen's arsenal. But it's not too much work to build it up. And I suppose, like a lot of other folks, it probably has its purpose somewhere. I just can't imagine what that would be. I mean, if you want to do damage in an area around a spot somewhere just in front of Ellen, use Bugaboo. It even charges. And those things will still explode. Not sure I even want to deal with a Humpty right now. Here's an idea. I'll set up Ludiag and back up to a safe distance. It works. Not particularly impressive, though. And I get nothing. Alright, let's go wake up that Humpty, capture 1 of 5, and then move on. We've got to get to the end of this endless corridor sometime soon. As usual, Ellen has this nasty habit of targeting her own folks instead of the ones you want to fight. And Humpty is the first folk in the game that drops purple dust. I am not going to be grinding purple dust from Humpty. Absolutely not. Now, this room we even enter from a different entrance than the one that Keats used. Most of the Hobbitrots turn into enemies. You get several Thrumpin. Might as well just kill those with Berlachen and start building up its next karma. And there's one other folk back there that might look kind of familiar. You've seen it in the picture book. And they can be a little bit of a pain to fight. The good news is they don't have any really ranged attacks. And we already know you use water. One Peg Powder attack will bring them down. And that's Mabinogion. And what you saw just there in the background is its attack. And I accidentally moved myself into the last room. I don't want to do that yet. So coming from this direction, there's no Hobbitrot, because we're going backwards in the level. I do want to kill every folk in every room, just because, you know, here we are, almost at Hobbitrot, and we've only got one picture book page. I remember there's a reward in one of the rooms for killing everything. Thunder isn't going to be a problem for us for much longer. That's the good news. The bad news is we gotta fight a bunch of Mabinogion to get there. I do need to capture more of them though, so that's good. The downside is its attack is so useless. So we'll just capture the rest of them. I think there's a total of 5 of them in this room, so I will be building up its karma. And Peg Powler's attack has a nice cone to it, so even if my shot isn't quite directly at the enemy, I still score ahead. Ammo count increased. As we're familiar with, that means that the attack area is widened by the addition of another, I guess, instance of whatever element pops out, but here's what Mabinogion does. Sits there for a few seconds, and then extends these electric tendrils and just kind of spins in place for a while. It's a good long while. It's just almost impossible to actually target an enemy with it. And I meant to go for a dead end, but I accidentally just went backwards. Forgot which door it was that we needed to move through and which door we came in. So here we go. One last dead end. Will I find Spriggan? No, but at least it is a different arrangement of crystals, which are very hard to hit with Mabinogion. At least we get a new arrangement of folks to fight this time. One Luidiag and one Answerer. And yes, I want to take out the Luidiag before he summons more Berlachen. Forget how many of them I needed to capture. It's just 3, but they don't show up very often. So this is the other problem with trying to use Mabinogion. That's 2 uses and 0 hits. I might have hit him that time, I didn't notice. Mabinogion is just a huge pain to use, and I don't recommend it in general. I'm sure it has its purpose, particularly once I've got all 4 tendrils of electricity, and particularly if you push enemies that are stunned into range of it or something. There's the page that tells us to charge up Humpty with electricity. As if I would go back for it now if I hadn't known that before. I totally would go back for it now if I hadn't known that before. And yet again, the green crystal opens the door, which means that the blue crystal must be an item. Surprise! Enemies! Just a couple more Answer. That was me forgetting that I actually put Garbear on one of my buttons. The nice thing is, I think Answerer is really weak to the wind element. Because look at that. I should be using the wind element more often against them. And all I have left to do is defeat 10 folks with Answerer. Which should be pretty easy to do. I've got the full 4-hit combo, so I can just stick it on the button I always use for melee attacks. Alright, moving on. We've only got one more room left. What might we find in there? Well, a fake Habitrot at least. This room is really weird because the Habitrot just keeps disappearing and reappearing in all kinds of random places around the room. And when you chase it down, it'll reappear somewhere else. There it is up on the ceiling. You can see the yellow dot on the map where it appeared. And finally it leaves. There's a picture book page in this room that, when I played through the game myself, I didn't find until I looked it up in an FAQ. Because I believe you have to watch the Habitrot leave the room. And I stumbled into the correct exit by accident the first time and never actually watched it leave the room. Gutboy at least has a nice, large, electric cage that'll capture a lot of these enemies. I'm not sure it's such a good idea to be exercising Ludiag at this point. But we're right before the mini-boss, so there should be a full heal in here somewhere. it's usually just the change in strategy that comes from trying to defeat folks with a specific folk that you don't really use all that much. That offers most of the challenge in this part. Ludiag's stronger now, maybe that'll make it worth something. Now I guess I might as well just kill everything with Verlachen. It's strong, it's got that going for it. And like it did for Keats, it's sort of average in every respect in terms of melee attacks. Just that Keats had a lot more melee attacks at this point. Defeat 2 Ludiag with Ludiag. I always like when you have to use a folk to defeat itself in order to build it up. I mean, capturing more of them, well, that's just kind of what you do. Defeating other things or just anything with them, alright. But defeating a folk with itself, I guess if you think about it, there's nothing really interesting about that at all. We're almost done. I think there's just enough enemies in the room to finish this karma. The last attack is actually pretty good when the folk falls down, because it'll hit the folks that are on the ground. Oh, I'm surprised it didn't explode. And I guess there's one folk left over there. What do I need for this one anyway? Oh. The folk I just cleared out of the room. And yet more Verlachen come in. But fortunately the onslaught in this room isn't nearly as close to endless as it was for Keats. I mean, you remember the fight in this room as Keats. It took forever. And it's Verlachen I need to kill with Bullseye, and Ludiag with Hawk. Easy enough anyway. There we go. And now I just clear out all the crystals in the room, because I know there's a book, a picture book page here somewhere. And a floating crystal. That's kind of cute. Alright, what do I hit a floating crystal with? Garbera should have the height to do it. And it still has nothing, but it caused a bunch more crystals to appear over near the exit, and those are the crystals we need to smash. I suppose it's kind of fun, but on the other hand, it's really tedious. And unfortunately, this page is just the one that tells us, look for the Habitroph that's moving differently. Alright, one more dead end, because I really, really want to find a Spriggan. And this time the green crystal has answerers in it. And killing them with Hobbledy is a little of a pain, just because you gotta sit there and charge it up. At least there are plenty of them. And one of the purple crystals was the exit, which means the blue one is a cold tree nut. Alright, just grabbing my large life drops, and part of me really does just want to leave the room, but I realize these are exactly the folks I need to kill to build up some more karmas. And they're both really good folks to build up karmas for, so let's do it. Bullseye's simultaneous use count increases, which means, yes, I summon 4 bullseyes per attack. And Verlachen just gets stronger. And nothing wrong with that. But it's not as cool as 4 bullseyes at once. And now, Habitrot. Almost anticlimactic after that whole endless corridor. I'm gonna get some wind element attacks in here. Because while I can take down, for example, the copy Habitrots with just any old attack, and Bullseye is great for it, the real one is particularly weak to wind. And we're already at the final phase, 8 of them at once. And Bullseye is also great here because once they shoot a fake and it disappears, they'll adjust their aim and start shooting at any other ones in the area. So that's as difficult as Habitrot ever needs to be. And even easier if you wear the Fairy Cloak and make yourself immune to its sleep attack. Which reminds me, Habitrot can't be an Earth attack for Ellen because she doesn't have any Earth element attacks. I think you know what that means. We've got our second sleep element attack. And like the folks that we got in Chapter 3 that had status effects, Habitrot is good. It actually makes the sleep element worth using. Once again, we've got different colored crystals marking the doors to the room. And purple is the only one that's open, leading to our door to the audience chamber, as we know. But of course, we're running so low on time. We're going to have to find out what lies beyond the audience chamber door, and what Ellen might have to say to Lulu next time.